matchup. So he's had a little bit of time to think. He definitely probably already was like, well, I could have done this better, I could have done that. Maybe I don't play on that map. So we will definitely see something different. But it's still a question if he can actually beat Mana, who also is going to be prepared for a more, I guess, robust Theory. Gonna probably be a little bit better off against the early game harassment as we were spawning on Broken Crown. Top right, it is Mana. And bottom left, we got Theory.
TheoRy, of course, representing the Aftermath Esports. And this is basically what we were already talking about after that previous series. It was like, yeah, that first map, Isle of Dread, too many openings into your main and no high ground to take advantage of. You're not going to get any free hits off. This is a very different map where you can safely expand. You still have a bit of a ramp to work with. And even if you don't have as many range units as your opponent, you can get a couple of hits off for free, and maybe your melee units can get 1 or 2 hits off as well. Like, in theory, no pun intended, I already like this map so much better for Theory, as we are going to see the Hexen, well, at least, yeah, the Hexen finding this proxy Starforge immediately as he activates the creep, but I feel like the creeps often ignore the building.
They do, actually, so he's going to have to do that when a Vector pops out, but I do like the idea. I think you realize very quickly, like, all right, that wasn't really going to do very much.
I've tried this as well, because in Warcraft 3 that always worked. If you see them building something, you're like, oh, I can wake up the creeps, and then the creeps will just attack the building. Right, well, not yet in Stormgate. Maybe one day, but that is not yet the case. We do have an Iron Vault as an opener, but we also have a Conclave already, so he can go for a mix of a couple of Brutes, a couple of Gowns. Knows what the deal is, but he can take advantage of that ramp. He's got the meat farm way far out. This is obviously not something you want to give up. So I guess the idea is, let's get this health camp, and then just kind of similar to Jagged Maw, stabilize with the health camp.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of familiar to that first game, but with the map being so different, I think we were going to see that effect. Whoa! We needed that blink. Fortunately, got it in time. It does mean that there's not going to be any more snipes on the camp, and that the camp is absolutely officially Theory's. But this is actually the map that I was thinking of when I was talking a lot about what he could do defensively. This is a map where there is actually back trees that you could kill, and we might see that eventually. But initially, that natural kind of lends itself to defense to the third as well, because of the way you position your units on the corner, exactly like Theory is doing now. What he did actually in previous tournaments that he participated in. He was very good at making sure he could lock that up. And now with the first Vector poke, I suppose, kind of dealt with nicely. The second one's kind of do some damage, but now it's also in, well, I was going to say some trouble, but I guess it could just blink out.
Nice save on one of those imps, right? Morphing it into a meat farm temporarily. Doesn't really need it yet, so he doesn't really want to let it complete. But at least he saved the imp. 2 more guns popped. If we blink, we can blink again. So this is actually going to be a little bit tricky, I think, for Mana to get this Vector safely out of here. It's taking a lot of damage all the way down to 27 HP, but it will live for now.
Yeah. Third one's going to join up, and he is taking the camp here. Not much that Theory can do about that with the army that he has. It's a little bit sketchy, but this is just a solid setup, and this is very familiar to their Jagged Maw game, in my opinion, where, again, I actually really hope that we get to see a very similar mid to late game, and then see if Theory can get his army in position, get it to the state that he wanted it to be, which I do think he was like 30 seconds away from, and take that win there. But a little bit sketchy here. The imps having to be pulled as the Vectors find some nice harassment opportunities.
This is painful because the units were way out of position for Theory as he was trying to get another creep can going near that Starforge. Instead, we're just going to work on the Starforge. That's nice to know, but this is a crazy amount of economic damage against one base Theory. He got that Shroud Stone up right at the edge, thinking that that could keep him safe. But the Vectors are so quick. They can blink cross it as well. They can blink onto the high ground too. It's actually very painful. I don't think this is what Theory was expecting at all. He probably thought, all right, my main base is safe for a little while because I've got that setup with the ramp. I've got my Shroud Stone there too. Those units just blinking into the natural with vision, of course, from that speed tower. That's very painful.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many imps died there, honestly, but it obviously was a lot of lost mining time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the damage that Mana wanted to do at the very least. You know, obviously winning the game would be preferable, but there's that damage. So Theory's going to have to recover, but his setup is decent, so I believe in his chances to, but it really is unfortunate because I think you're absolutely right. He figured, yeah, he's not going to try and go for it anymore. I'm safe to go and push out in the map, and that just wasn't really true.
And now he's afraid to move out because he's paranoid. He's like, last time I moved out, a couple of Vectors showed up in my main. And if you have a 2 or 3 base setup and you've got 35 or 40 imps walking around, you're like, yeah, okay, it's painful if 1 or 2 of them fall and you have a bit of lost mining time because they have to battle, but I'll survive. But on a 1 base economy, that is something that you're really going to feel. You feel that in every RTS, and Stormgate is no different in that regard. I think that was an incredibly painful moment for Theory, who actually didn't even get the creep can, by the way. He did get the Starforge, but didn't even get the bonus gold of clearing out that creep camp. That means that those creeps are still there, and Mana could potentially finish those camps off as well and take control of that watchtower in the bottom right. I guess TheoRy is getting there at this point, so in the end he will get it, and it's still that he could have really used earlier just to grow a little bit quicker into the mid game.
They are 100% right. He was afraid of the run by again, so he even left the skull to scout the kind of camp, but also the jump in point. And there's kind of generally the movement of the vectors. So it was wise. It is unfortunate because he actually is kind of a position perhaps where he needs to take a bit of a risk because he did take that damage. So just that little bit of a delay on getting his own camps, and well, they just blink right in, don't they?
Very cool as well. He used the scan there to get some vision, blinks into the main base immediately, and it is round 2 for Mana as he gets deep into the main base of TheoRy. TheoRy obviously does not want to lose any of these imps here, but I think it's going to be inevitable that a few of them will fall. 2 Gowns is not going to be enough. We have a couple of Fiends showing up, but 1 or 2 Fiends also not enough. Mana is just having a field day here in the main base of TheoRy with these very quick and very awesome vectors that just seem to be able to get the job done.
They do seem to be doing that. At the end of the day, there's also just so much chaos. Do keep that in mind. It really messes with your build order. It messes with your flow, so further mistakes are more and more likely, honestly. That's the kind of the additional factor of being good at a tournament is keeping your cool, and it can be difficult when you're losing like this.
Mana does end up losing a couple of these vectors as Blink was temporarily on cooldown, but we look at the banks. Mana is sitting on 1200 Luminite. If he starts spending that, he's going to have triple the supply of TheoRy right now. He's done a really good job in spending his money. The only problem is, Zombie Grove, is that he doesn't have a lot of it.
Yeah, no, that's a big problem. Mana going to be slapping down a lot of production facilities, some buildings, some nodes, battery banks. I mean, he still hasn't spent all of his money, actually, which is... It's getting kind of weird now, actually. I don't know what he's waiting for, but perhaps just having too much fun with the vectors right now. Or maybe he has enough... No, there's no way that he has enough camps to build 10 Argents at once, so I don't know why he's saving money.
I think we'll take care of it eventually.
Eventually, yes, I do believe that.
We can search some of these creation chambers too to build them a little bit quicker. Feels like Mana is once more absolutely in the driver's seat here as TheoRy is just having a hard time getting an army. At this point, the Menace is not capable of getting an army. Every unit he builds is kind of getting picked up one by one. Even the Hexen is going to get picked up. Like, what does the TheoRy really have right now? I think those 2 counts, that's literally it.
Oh, no, that's not a good sign. That is not a good sign at all. Unfortunately, maybe... I don't know, maybe he did actually consider this back when he chose the other maps. He knew that that could be a blink in, thought that he had a good enough start, and then just kind of underestimated the potential. I can see why it's very frustrating here. TheoRy not going to give up quite yet, but Mana finally getting all his production up, now actually can spend that money. He got a 3rd base as well. He took that kind of behind one as the natural anyway. He does lose that...
Meat farm.
Thank you, meat farm. And not that was helping out too much, but at least it was something.
Yeah, well, now we are supply blocked, so we do kind of need that meat farm. At this point, the man does not have one. He basically has his main, he's got his natural. Like the idea with the Shroud Stone, I thought it was cute. Unfortunately, Mana just found a very clever way to completely avoid it. He's going to use one of his top bar abilities to completely make that camp disappear. Mana is having a field day. The only thing that he needs to do is start spending his money, Zombie Grub, because the average unspent resources a little bit too high for a player of Mana's caliber in literally any RTS we can think of.
Oh, I'm sorry if you ever watch this back, Mana, but it is a little interesting, you know? Perhaps maybe a little too stuck in the ways of like, well, no, on 3 bases I need 3 and then 5 creation chambers, and it's like, actually, if you're bad at RTS like I am, you just realize better spend the money as, 50 command centers come down. But I think he also knows that he's just in such a winning position. You know, he's not really urgently doing much back at home.
Perhaps he feels that keeping the tempo and momentum that he has created for himself is a little more important than keeping those resources low, even though we are closing in at 2K at this point, and that really is not where it should be looking. But Mana's going to get a few more power banks, a couple of additional creation chambers, I'm sure, as we're just expanding, perhaps another collection array. And he's just doing a really good job in resetting TheoRy into the Stone Age over and over again. My poor TheoRy is still working with the most basic roots, the most basic gowns. Can't really get much going. What he does have at least is an expand. We are getting a lot of imps, so TheoRy does have something to be hopeful of. This is not as disastrous as I have a 1-base economy with 11 imps on Luminite, and that is it. Like, no, we've got 2 bases. We have our first Magmadon relatively early as well. But obviously Mana is still in complete control of this game.
Just scanned ahead, saw that there wasn't much to defend. Magmadon is going to cause some issues, but it's only one, and it will get shot down. This also only is a little bit closer, as another Magmadon pops at a very appropriate time to really help out there. But again, while this does look good, and this did just reduce the supply gap, it's also those 2,000 minerals or 2,000 luminite that Mana has. That should be more like a 75 or 80 supply to 50.
That's actually really cool to see that a lot of the things that we know about traditional RTSs hold up here as well. Attacking upper ramp into static defenses is difficult, even if you've got a few more units. Do not underestimate the power of a tower like that early on, or a couple of these fiends helping out. Obviously, the Gauns are able to get a few more extra hits off. That was a really good fight for TheoRy. Does not really change the state of this game. Mana should still be in control, but Mana is going to have to clean it up a little bit, and he truly, I'm sorry that we started to sound like a broken record over here, he needs to start spending his money, because it is becoming a little bit ridiculous to see a player of the caliber of Mana sitting at 2.8k luminite.
Okay, finally spent about 800 of that, but it's not just like, okay, Mana's really good at the game, trust us guys. It's actually one of those macro mistakes that might be lending itself to a comeback for TheoRy, because he's not only making a huge macro mistake for minutes at this point, guys, he also did over-dedicate. The Magmadons did their job. The second one timed out perfectly. In TheoRy, I think he's got a little bit of optimism now. There's that hope that is finally there.
I would love to see if TheoRy has like a Hellforge already, if he's getting the Magmadon upgrade, or if he got the upgrades on...
Oh, he got Shadow Flyers again. Wow, he really likes these units.
Yeah, that's early. Especially for a game where it feels like he hasn't been that rich. It feels to me like it's an investment. It's
his only way of counterattacking, because they will be able just to suicide bomb into the prisms. So... and if he gets the upgrade, they also take the collection array like we did see in their first series too. So I do get it, but I also agree that it's kind of expensive to get there. And then, oh, I guess he was also thinking of the sites. I kind of forgot that was there. That wasn't really committed to by Mana. He went back into Vectors.
I mean, honestly, the Gauns are obviously becoming better. I assume that we've got the upgrades, both of them. They look faster as well. TheoRy is really starting to get into a position where he's probably a little bit hopeful. He's like, man, I've been doing surprisingly good. As Mana is going to get on top of the third base here, though. And that is one that I'm afraid TheoRy is going to have to cancel. Now he's going to try to fight. He's going to drop a Shroud Stone. He's going to go for it with the Magmadon, as he's also using one of his top bar abilities. No, he's just building a tower by that looks.
Well, this is still going to be maybe too bad of a fight, but the Observer just pointed out the Argents don't actually even have their upgrade. Like, Mana, I think, I'm going to say, I think he got kind of lazy. It doesn't matter. It's kind of like he deserved to, because he did so well in the early game. But these are the reasons that TheoRy has hope at all.
There's our emergency tower. It's very powerful, as it, I think for 30 seconds it shoots twice as quick, so it's really powerful. Regular Shroud Stone's already pretty good when the armies are not massive, but using your top bar ability to summon one of those Shroud Stones immediately makes them real powerful, and is going to push Mana back temporarily. Now after 30 seconds you still have your tower, so it's not like it disappears, but obviously TheoRy is still just a little low on units.
I think maybe I missed it, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't there. Now it is there. We could probably continue on to the secondary and tertiary tiers, in fact, because absolutely Mana is winning. He has been winning, and it would have required a lot more mistakes, I think, to actually lose this game.
Yep, all the Argents are here. They are doing their thing. We've got a couple of the Vectors still in the mix as well. And Imps, they can push out a little bit of damage.
Block. The Celestial supply is actually very interesting and definitely different than most other RTSs, but perhaps we'll get into it after the introduction of the players. The 4-spawn map, bottom right we got TheoRy, top left is Mana, so we got a diagonal spawn here.
Yep, a Lost Hope cross map. It is a very fun map where obviously you've got a relatively safe expand to take that gives you a bit of high ground to work with as well. You've got a health camp nearby that should help you out defensively if you're forced to defend against some early aggression of your opponents. You can see TheoRy opening up with a Conclave first that he builds on the ramp with his main to the natural, and then gets an Iron Vault and a meat farm on the low ground. Start creeping, and then eventually, once we have enough resources, probably drop a second base. I really love the idea of just going for a mix of a couple of Gauns and Magmadons, and then eventually getting the Flyers out of the Spire. That's not something I feel like you should really rush, especially not if you've been hurting economically, because it does cost a worker, it costs a lot of resources to drop those buildings, and you need an army to fight with whatever Mana is throwing at you, because Mana does really seem to be a pretty damn aggressive player, not in the sense of he's all in all the time, but he's absolutely going to be in your face.
That's for sure. Somebody is like actually in StarCraft as well. Need a couple more all-ins there, but a very aggressive player indeed. So we have him going for an expansion. The natural is up, perhaps even quickly into a third expansion. I think that is actually the plan. Yeah, so he's going to be a little greedy here on one of the larger maps. It also is an uncertain spawn going up the top left. I think he did actually scout it with the Hexen eventually, but point is now it's actually the longest that it can be, rush distance-wise.
It's actually kind of funny because I don't think Mana necessarily knows yet, right? The TheoRy is in the bottom right.
I thought his Hexen... Oh, Mana, yeah. No, I don't think that happened.
So Mana could have technically taken a base here that is in the main base of TheoRy. Because it's vertical or cross.
You're actually right. Yeah. Unless we missed a scan, which I was also...
Yeah, that's
it can be hard to catch when it actually happens, you know, it can have like a spiral and then it's you know, kind of gone. But that's also what I wondered in the parting versus Mana game, if Mana didn't even realize that he was actually in those particular positions. But anyway, we have Mana getting a lot of economy and is going to be playing naturally into more of a mid-game, giving TheoRy perhaps his chance to really show his playstyle off finally.
Yeah, and that's going to be awesome, because I felt that we were so close on Jagged Maw of TheoRy, working with the units that he was dreaming of, getting all the upgrades and showing us some cool moves with maybe nice ground movement, great stumps, Weavers doing their thing and abducting an Animancer perhaps. Unfortunately, none of that really came into play, but perhaps here, cross-map, lost hope. If it's ever going to happen, it should happen. It seems that Mana did throw down a scan in the bottom left main spawn. And after he realized that TheoRy was not there, perhaps he went for it.
I think that's what
Polaris
coming in as a third commentator.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a funny expand to take because the ultimate hidden expand.
Yeah, but that is always the frustration of Celestials. You know, we've been seeing a lot of how they play out just like a 1 or 2 base, but this is one of the rare times I guess we see just instantly into 3. And then going into the mid-game, but I don't... I'm looking forward to the mid-game, but Mana is going to be very rich, and TheoRy does not know about that.
Yeah, but TheoRy is creeping like a madman, though. He already took out 4 camps at this point. Meanwhile, Mana only took out a single one. I kind of feel like we live in the era where creeping is supposed to be a bit more powerful than taking expense. Mana is taking a lot of damage on one of his vectors here against these creeps that are really not very powerful yet, but I guess if we're not paying attention, they will start dealing some damage. So finally, Mana gets his second camp. But this has gotta feel good for TheoRy, because finally he can play a normal game where his entire game plan did not get disrupted by a couple of vectors right in his face from the very get-go.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I think we're going to see possibly, I know it's calling it very, very soon, but it's definitely the best chance for TheoRy to get a map versus Mana. And the creeping has been excellent, as you pointed out. That's one of the big reasons why you don't want to expand. Not just that maybe you can't, because they're going to snowball against you army-wise, but you also can't because you're not the one getting the camp. So they're going to snowball against you camp and money-wise, which might have already happened. We have a lot of units out here, and Mana is going to be forced to retreat. Unfortunately, those Argents not nearly as fast. Almost get surrounded, not quite, but it looks like those two are gone no matter what.
This is the power of the camps as well. TheoRy having both of the speed camps at the moment. Look how quick his army is, even though he doesn't even have some of those mid-game upgrades that we expect players to normally get. Perhaps around this time, not quite yet, but they're going to come online soon. But because he's got both camps, his army is so freaking quick, and he can actually finally start battling those vectors without feeling like his army is slow and the army of Mana is so quick.
Yeah. Mana forced to pull everything back to help defend. Now, fortunately, that high ground with the ramp, with all those power banks, is going to be helpful in defending. We've got another base, actually. That's 4 bases for Mana then, right? And that was scouted, but I don't believe the one on the other base, the other spawn position has been scouted yet.
But it's actually very smart for Mana to take this base, because if he didn't, then TheoRy might be wondering, like, okay, what on earth have you been doing? Because you're not creeping nowhere near as much, you haven't been annoying with vectors in my face, you somehow suddenly let me creep the entire map, and you're only on 2 bases? Question mark? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think it's very important for Mana to take the 3rd base, to at least give TheoRy the idea. It's like, oh, I'm just investing in my economy, that's all, there is nothing else to it. Of course, he does not want to see TheoRy find that hidden base.
That's actually a really big problem. That is an excellent point. I mean, is it worth sacrificing it? Well, I saved it the first time, maybe not now. I mean, weirdly, kind of, but he's so far managing to not have to straight up sacrificing it. Air unit's not getting back there. Or not air. Yeah, well, air unit's not getting back there. So the collection rate, when it is microed away, yeah, can take advantage of that.
Yeah, that third base on this map, I think, is in general very hard to attack because you have to go past that high ground of the natural of mana, and that's where the towers are, that's where the units are standing too. So it's not really feasible to attack the third without being able to attack the natural. And attacking the natural up that tiny ramp into all that static D is just incredibly difficult. So I think Mana knew that, okay, this might get awkward, but I should never really lose it, and he did not end up losing it. Now that doesn't mean that it's all bad news for TheoRy. Still not aware yet of that hidden base. Man will just continue creeping. And I do think his supply is going to be higher this game than it's ever been throughout any of the games he's played against Mana.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to see him create his dream composition. The right amount of Gauns, the right amount of Magmadons, maybe even a couple of Hellfires in the mix. We'll see. I think it's going to be fun.
I think so. You know, I've been talking about how there's a sentiment, or we've certainly seen some games where the Infernal in the late game looks stronger, and one of those was definitely highlighted in the Tasteless TV tournament, where it looked like the Celestial had built up literally a maxed out army, I believe, with a bunch of static defense, and then they're like, understandably, everyone was like, well, I guess that's it, right? And then the Infernals actually broke it. So seriously, do not underestimate the late game just because we haven't seen TheoRy able to use it correctly yet.
We already see that the first upgrades for the Magmadons are being researched in the Hell Forge, so that's nice to see that they're going to be able to stun units while they use their stomp ability. Of course, there's a tier 3 upgrade as well. That's going to make them a lot quicker. It's a massive upgrade, but it takes a little while to get tier 3. As Mana is thinking about his first drive-by of the game with 5 vectors, the Magmadon was right there. Zombie Grub, why does it not fight? Well, apparently because TheoRy has found the hidden base, so that is pretty big. But it's going to be less big if we end up losing a whole bunch of imps at home against these 3 vectors.
Well, so far not losing a lot. Now we finally might have some go down. TheoRy does have 3 bases to actually crank out these imps, especially with the top bar ability. So some can be sacrificed, but obviously if this killed like 20, that would be a different issue. I don't think I got anywhere close. I mean, this was bothersome. This, you know, distracted him a little bit, but as he found and killed the base, so the distraction really wasn't that important.
We prep one, has now already killed 4 out of 5. I think you're spot on. This definitely worked out a lot better for TheoRy. I might start kicking himself a little bit, right, for completely changing up the game plan and letting TheoRy play the kind of game that I'm sure TheoRy is very comfortable with and also incredibly good at. Because that man crept fast, took full control of the map, got the speed camps too, and then even without those tier 2 upgrades on the Gauns, his army was so quick, so fast, and was able to put up a very good fight early on right off the get-go.
Yeah, it's not the plan Mana wanted, but it is still chugging along, right? Like as much as he's been under pressure, he's lost the base, he's had to temporarily give up the 4th base, now the 3rd. Like, he's actually still in the game, obviously. But it is a question of how you're going to deal with that late game army, especially on a map that you can actually get this humongous wide battle. You know, it's not a bunch of chokes where the Dark Prophecy is going to capitalize the most it ever can. In fact, the Dark Prophecy in the middle of this map might not even be that impressive.
No, but it's still, I think, always good.
Oh, it's still good,
Yeah, I guess, especially against all these Gauns that are out there. What is very tricky when you play Infernals is that it's so easy to get supply blocked over and over again. Once you've got the Gauns and you get the upgrade Plagued Access, then you get a Fiend for every single creep you kill, and you start killing 4 or 5 creeps, you get +5 supply. And this is why we're going to see TheoRy be supply blocked every now and then. And it's absolutely worth it to just drop like 2 or 3 meat farms in advance. Even if that's not like the cleanest macro, you're really going to need it. Otherwise, you're supply blocked over and over again. And there are moments where you do want to start building some imps, where you do need an extra Magmadon or you know, something among those lines.
And kind of speaking of that supply block, as we see all these upgrades coming online, they're really actually already on the way to tier 3 with the Magmadons, tier 3 on the Animancers. Just a reminder, the way that Celestials work is they don't actually have a supply block. They have like a soft cap, I guess you could call it, where if they run out of energy, then their units are bad and their production's kind of bad too. Hasn't happened, I think, in any of these games as of yet, but just wanted to note that we do have a potential fight coming in the middle of the map.
Yep, seems like Mana is pretty confident in his army. He's got a lot of Argents. We've got a Cabal or 2 in the mix as well. Oh, Magmadon from the top right, that could have been so massive. But I think TheoRy is waiting for his upgrade to finish up so they can get a little bit quicker, and it's going to be easier to get those big stomps going.
Does the Cabal have the lift? That is my question, because they can lift the Magmadon right out of the engagement, and then it's just literally floating in the air. So that might be the plan. Debilitate's also kind of powerful, so it's useful to have. I guess we can't actually see if they have the upgrade or not, but we will, I guess, if a Magmadon lifts, guys, that's what that is.
Oh, I love it. TheoRy is indeed setting up a very, very, very wide concave just to make sure that he can nullify the effect of the Dark Prophecy a little bit, and those Animenses won't be able to grab his entire army. This really does feel like a crazy amount of Infernals.
That's a lot of Animancers, but they channel that Dark Prophecy, guys. So if the Magmadons push the Argents out of the way, then the Animancers either have to die or just give up on the channel and run away. So that's what TheoRy is trying to go over. He's just running past the Dark Prophecy, jumping on top of the Animancers, even has a Hellborn coming out here to help out, and it does look like TheoRy is finally going to get a map against Mana.
Yep, that was a great fight. He just had enough, right? And he still has so many high HP units left over. And Mana is forced to run back home, maybe with static defenses and another Animancer. We can actually start stabilizing, as that is a pretty good Dark Prophecy. A couple of those Gaunt's do get stuck, and obviously, like, those fights on the center of the map are fantastic, because those Gaunts, they create so many Fiends, and it makes it almost impossible for the Argents to just stand there and fight. But eventually, if you run out of Fiends, you do need to be a tiny bit more careful, as Mana's going to try to kite these Magmadons, and he's doing pretty good. The Animancers really are amazing, but they do run out of energy. Thank the Lord, eventually.
They do. Yes, they do. And unfortunately, some of these units are not really great at walking away. The Argents do get a tiny speed boost, actually, with the upgrade, so they're a little bit faster. They're able to chase those Magmadons. And the Hellborn. The Hellborn is just generally very slow. And so, whoa, now we have the Shadow Flyers finally coming in. You can see they just instantly took that out. They could have gone after the Prism, I guess, if they wanted, but they're looking for the Collection Arrays. They're more expensive. They take longer to actually get set up, and it's just frankly more obnoxious to have to actually replace those compared to the Prism. So I do love the idea of the Shadow Flyer harassment. I absolutely love it. He just couldn't get to a place where it was actually viable with how far behind he was.
A lot of the creeps have respawned though, so Mana is still going to be able to get some income if he just takes out a few of those camps on his side of the map, and of course he didn't lose all of his collection arrays at once. I mean, it's still a close game, it's still very competitive. I want to say that I like it for TheoRy, but if the Animancer count goes up and Mana can force a fight in a slightly more choky area, rather than like the most wide open place on any map in the current map pool, there is a chance that it's going to be a lot more difficult for TheoRy to take a fight as good as he previously did.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But TheoRy hasn't added on all of the units that he possibly can. There is one big bad unit that we might actually see in a game like this. That is the Dragon. Yeah, it used to be a top bar ability. Now it's built from the Tier 3 Shrine and does still cost energy, but also resources. Another battle in the middle of the map. Dark Prophecy coming down here. A little awkward on the top side. Almost a surround. Not quite. Unfortunately, when the Argents move away, the Animancers are then targeted. And there's the Dragon. It is quite powerful, guys. It does get upgrades as well. Very difficult to take down. TheoRy now once again on the hunt through the middle of the map.
And a lot of Fiends in the mix, and those Fiends really make it complicated for those Argents to just stand there and fight, or even to just kite successfully. And Mana is honestly kind of running out of space. He's going to try to get up the ramp here and eventually make it to a safe area. But the supply of TheoRy is not dropping. If anything, it's only going up because of the Plague Axes on the guns. Can we get the surround with all the Fiends? It's a semi-surround zombie grub, but it does look damn good. One more Animancer shows up from the left side. It's going to make it a bit more difficult for TheoRy to chase. But TheoRy is absolutely crushing this fight up to this point. Perhaps one big stomp from the Magmadon. Look at that Magmadon go.
Yeah, it's actually got a little closer in supply eventually. Dark Prophecy helping to take out the Fiend overwhelming. That's usually what happens when an Infernal really wins and Fiends pop everywhere. It gets so many units, but Dark Prophecy definitely good at taking those out. So there wasn't as much of a snowball effect, but as you see TheoRy get back to macro, boom, jumps up 40 more supply. 70 supply difference overall. Still has the Dragon in play, which could also go harass if you ever wanted to back away from the fight.
Yep, obviously TheoRy does not need to stick around here forever. He does not need to kill Mana, but he seems to believe that he still has the better army, and he can still get a couple of good trades up with the Dragon supporting his Gaunts and his Brutes and his Fiends in the back. I really don't think we should be attacking up that ramp, even if we've got a 40-50 supply lead zombie grub. Why don't we just creep a little, get another base, play it safe, and let's get that first point on the board against the man who's been a bit of a menace to him today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was able to prove that he absolutely knows what he's doing versus Celestial against Maxed, but Mana did prove a little bit different. Now he's getting his chance to shine, but you could absolutely argue Mana kind of gave him a chance to shine. Maybe the map spawns did, actually. Maybe that's why Mana changed his plans, but yeah, this is maybe not something that Mana's going to allow happen again in such a fashion. But, you know, that's been kind of TheoRy's goal, survive until he gets to this very, very powerful army. He did check for hidden bases, didn't find any. He knows that Mana is on his last breath.
Kind of funny how Kalaris was just joking that nobody would ever take the center. Now they're both taking the center at the same time over here on Lost Hope. But TheoRy obviously has a 100 army supply lead. Or look, he has a lot of imps. Perhaps he has the ability on the imps as well. So he can start blowing a couple of them up if he wants to. For now, I guess we're just going to mine some Therium. Mana's going to try to do the same thing, but TheoRy should take control of that watchtower in the center. I think the moment he does that, he's going to see like, wait a minute, you're here too. It's not just me. It's both of us. Well, I think my army is a whole lot better than yours. And he's not wrong.
No, he's not. Mana is still in the game, but what does his army look like? 2 Animancers, Argents, and 1 Cabal, which I don't know if it's helped all that much. And well, both Animancers are actually out of the equation now. Well, weirdly enough, he's running past them. Okay, well they're not. They're coming in from the backside with Dark Prophecy, but it's just TheoRy knows he's overwhelming. He doesn't care.
Yep, there is a lot of Inferno here with a lot of very high speed units, especially the Magmadons. That's very difficult to take out. GG gets scored. And he got out. But this time he got in, and he never got out. He actually ended up losing all 5 of them, and that was obviously a painful moment.
All right, we're back on Jagged Maw, another map that TheoRy did get close, but not quite. And the top side, it is Mana once again. Bottom side, TheoRy. This was a frustrating map because of how you could rush through the middle, but when it comes to the base setup that I think TheoRy is going for, the natural is kind of able to be blocking the main, obviously, and then the third also has a very tight choke, so you think defensively that might be well too. But that did kind of bite him in the butt a little in that game because he could not get a great concave, he couldn't get his weavers close enough. It was a lot of the way Mana played last game, but I think he also just had better chances to take good fights on a map like that.
Well, I think the Hexen has found it immediately. Now the Starforge does go down, but it's still nice to get that confirmation out.
Yeah.
TheoRy was looking for it, he finds it. I'm a tiny bit surprised that we're playing on this map once more because Mana really did not get a lot of momentum going. Now sure, he ended up winning the game, and you might just think, well, if I won on it, why would I just not play it again? But I felt that was omega close, and I think with 1 or 2 different late game decisions by TheoRy, if he would have spent his resources a tiny bit different, perhaps earlier focus on the Magmadons and getting all those flying units a tiny bit later.
Yeah.
If he holds 1 time, I kind of feel like we could have been looking at a similar game to what we just saw on Lost Hope. Now, obviously, Mana perhaps did not know that before the series started, but it feels scary because the start felt really strong for TheoRy, and I don't see any reason why it should be different this time. So he does end up losing a round immediately.
It is also the case, remember that he kind of fought over the Mana's health camp for a long time, or maybe he could have capitalized on his map control to get more economy. Just ways that he could improve that game, of which he was already in a good foundation, but then just kind of missed that power play towards the end. He wasn't quite ready to go, and especially being defensive on this map, you get into those chokes. There are some open spaces over to the left, which is where he would want to actually use his army.
Oh, that's big. That is very, very big.
Ugh.
Mana a little bit greedy there. Really wanted to get that second count, and he got it. But at the cost of a Vector, and that was the healthy Vector as well. Well, ZombieGrub, everything that we were touching upon, the first minute of this game is kind of happening. Last time TheoRy had a good start. This time it's even better.
Yeah.
You gotta be really unhappy with your Mana. And we clearly know how powerful this build is with Mana because we saw that in the very first game that these guys played. But on this map, with that health camp, with the support of the meat farm, with those fiends early on, this feels like it's an amazing map for TheoRy to play the kind of game that he wants to play. And it's not a good one for this specific opener of Mana.
Yeah, it's a very good chance for him, especially if he improves on some of the notes of the first time around. Now, Mana can also improve on some things, obviously not so far, but I mean, as far as his mid-game, maybe he doesn't go into the air units, maybe he doesn't actually try and play with that, and maybe that improves it a little bit for him too, or maybe he actually gets to his own air harassment, which is clearly his plan, and then they all kind of died, which is very impressive.
I was wondering if Mana was going to try to wake up the big bat creep there while TheoRy was working on his Starforge. I feel like that could have maybe saved his Starforge for a couple of seconds. As the first Vector drive-by is a fact once more. There is a Shroud Storm there helping out a little bit. Mana is being a little bit reckless. Wow. As he's going to lose the first Vector very quickly. Does save the second one. Gets 2 counts. Does not really feel like these trades are worth it as Mana loses the second Vector too. Oh my goodness, ZombieGrub, the man who was in total control, won 3 maps in a row over the American Infernal player of Aftermath Esports. Having a bit of a nightmare here.
Yeah, absolutely a nightmare, 100%. Now, TheoRy is not trying to push the advantage as much as last time. Okay, there we go. We are going to get in the middle of the map. We're going to take the vision camp. That is the easier one to take, and then perhaps actually challenge that health camp. And I wonder if Mana is going to have a worse defense, because it was close in the very beginning. It kind of became evident he had enough defense at his base to hold, but he couldn't hold the health camp for very long. And that might actually go even better for TheoRy in this game here.
Really cool build by TheoRy, just a strong opening on this map specifically. I mean, Mana may get his health camp, but TheoRy can just safely go for the camp in the top left. That's once more going to skyrocket his supply. Should be able to get another Fiend to it too. Going to give him some bonus money that he can spend at home successfully. I am incredibly curious to see what Mana can do here to start turning this around, because it really does feel that almost everything that could have gone wrong for the man who won the first 3 games when these two played against each other has gone wrong. One more thing goes wrong. He still doesn't even have control of the health camp.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
It is much worse. It is much worse. That's just it is what it is. That is much, much worse. Now TheoRy, who again maybe invested a little bit in that first Jagged Maw game, didn't successfully break the natural. Here now we got Power Banks plenty. Had maybe a chance there to continue on. Obviously had to back away from the overcharge, but there you go. It's now gone. Comes back in. Only 2 Argents to help out. Arkship trying to help out too, but if TheoRy's got more units on the way, this is going to get very difficult.
And we know how Argents can be very powerful, but it just kind of feels like this is going to be one of these moments where they spawn one by one and die one by one. Now we do have overcharge being used there. That's going to push these units away from the Infernal player for a little bit. Small miss rally on the guns there, tiny bit sloppy. But I feel that TheoRy's start has been more than good enough to get away with a tiny micro error. Plus the second one too. Obviously can't keep on doing this, but I still really like it for the American Infernal player. Even though the second overcharge gets dropped too. But this time in return he at least gets an Argent.
Yeah, I was worried. I mean, if he didn't have an overcharge, then that Rhea was actually in trouble. Now that is going to successfully defend. Mana is going to get his 2 bases by the looks of it, but it was very, very costly. TheoRy should have had time to actually build up his natural and probably thinking about a third as well. He did just spend his money, so third is coming down. Oh, he just spent his money on all the imps to saturate. There you go.
We can obviously, once we have been trading out some units, you gather up energy and you top bar a lot quicker, and then you can reset the charges of your main base. You build 3 workers, you're down to 0, use that ability, get 3 more charges, build 3 more imps immediately. It's a great way to spend your money and make sure you're going to get richer in the future.
Yep. TheoRy's in a powerful position, definitely feeling more like the last game, and Mana is the one that's got to figure out how to deal with it. This is a chokier map, right? So
yeah.
I mentioned how the battles will still be different just because of the map. If Mana can get Dark Prophecy in the same type of choke on TheoRy's third base, it will be very powerful. There's no doubt about that, but that should be on the top of TheoRy's mind. I'm in a good position. What can he do to come back? Animancers in a choke. Avoid that at all costs.
And TheoRy's units are still so quick. Look at these Fiends, they're flying. One more Argent gets picked off. I actually think if TheoRy just continues doing what he's currently doing, and he takes care of all the creep camps the moment they respawn, he keeps on expanding, I think you can spam those shadow flies that you love, Zombie Grub, for days. And even if you don't get the most efficient trades ever, if you're 2.5 or 3 times as rich as your opponent, who really cares, right? Spam shadow flyers all day, every day, and don't show up with 40 guns and then fight into Dark Prophecy 3 times and lose all of them. No, just spam some shadow flyers. That actually seems like a very fun way to play out this specific map.
I think so, and he's a wonderful position to do it as well. I really believe that is his next choice. And then, again, perhaps a third base at some point. Mana definitely going to try his best to recover. What risks can he take to do so? He could once again try and sneak a couple of prisms to the right side middle, where you can pass through that, guys. It just is one of the unnatural ways to get across the map. So we do have less scouting, less vision on that side often.
Get an extra conclave or 2, so TheoRy can pump out more units if the time comes. And we can really see that the supply is telling the tale of the early game here. TheoRy with a 33 supply lead as he's getting the Macrogun upgrades too.
But Mana's also mismacroing again pretty hard.
Saving for something.
1,000 for something? I mean,
I have no idea, Zombie Grub. I mean, it's just been a frustrating game because especially I think on this map, it's really hard. If you feel like your opponent has total map control, kind of stuck in your little corner on the top right side of the map. The moment you move out, those very quick Fiends jump on top of your slow Argents. What can Mana really do at this point? Like it's very frustrating to play if you're Mana. Yeah,
you know, people sometimes say speed is speed, right? You're just like, you're trigger happy, you're fast, like good for you, right? APM matters. What really makes people fast a lot of the time is that they just know exactly what they want to do next. They know where they want to go to in an RTS. And so a lot of pro gamers will be able to do that even in chaotic games. But even they sometimes get such a chaotic game, such a bad start to a game, that you start to see those little mini calculations that they have to do that in a pleasant game, they wouldn't have to. So they do end up making more macro mistakes.
I guess Mana's only real plan is indeed trying to take control of those Luminite mines in the center. A lot of static defenses. That's really his only game plan, right? Because you can't really move out anymore to the top left. You're just going to get swarmed. We've got an Archangel. Okay.
So he's going to go for the the slam, is what I'm going to call it, through the middle of the map. I think he successfully hit it from that Fiend that was kind of doing a scout. The Fiend did see, of course, the prisms there, and it just, you know, I said it's a risk he could take, and it's really very risky because there is no way that TheoRy wouldn't guess something is over there, and there's no way he wouldn't make Shadow Flyers to kill all those bases off to the right side. So he can, this is funny. Mana can get some mining off the right side for a little while, but then he really has to think about how much of the Shadow Flyer is going to appear. Probably not even planning on having that for very long.
Yep, and TheoRy is obviously just consuming the bottom left side of the map, really still taking out important and powerful creeps as well, in fucking clever ways to get some value out of one of these towers. This really does remind me of those Warcraft 3 days, where people found more and more efficient ways of creeping without really taking any damage. So the tank does get taken out, but the army is here. These Gauns are quick and going to get on top of a couple of these Archons immediately. The Archangels are going to be forced to fight. They fly in, but I don't know if they can really get out safely.
Yeah, they do take a little bit to get back up in the air, which I think is fair, but that means that they can, in larger fights, get sniped when they do that. So yeah, they might hit, but then they immediately die after. So you do have to be careful. But we're already at 2 Archangels. Again, they could go harass and hopefully live and come back. And if you get to like 6, that is a lot of explosions. They will be kind of intimidating to the gaunt army that TheoRy has.
It'd be very cool if TheoRy could maybe go for some drop lane, because we already have the Shadow Flyers, but he could maybe go for, I believe it's called Harbinger, but I'm not totally certain.
Yes, it is.
And load up a bunch of guns, drop those into the main base of Mana, because Mana's probably going to have a lot of defense over here in the center of the map, near those bases that he really wants to get.
No.
I think some drop play would be very cool on the side of TheoRy.
You're absolutely right. That is a very good point. And kind of funny that we forgot that that was a thing, because that was dominating some of the metas previously. The Harbinger drops were kind of crazy. But yeah, we could see that, because he might also control the skies. I don't know how that Shadow Flyer fight would have gone. I'm just going to tell you.
I have no idea.
Archangels, they don't shoot in the air, right? So they'd have to land, I guess? That would be very odd. And then if they land, I guess they would be free to go. So that's fair enough. I think they both looked at it and were like, no thank you, and just ran away.
TheoRy is sitting on a lot of Ethereum, by the way. I'm wondering what he could potentially spend it on, or if that is going to be something that he's going to have a lot of, period. And it's going to be a lot easier for him to spend his Luminite.
I actually really love that. I'm not gonna lie.
It's only 4 Shadow Flyers, huh?
Yeah, well, collection arrays have proven to be very fragile. If you didn't know that, now I think this tournament has showed you it. And Shadow Flyers, they're not just good for sniping collection arrays. If Mana's plan was to turtle behind static defense, Shadow Flyers, easy. Yeah,
you can't have towers everywhere. You can have a lot of towers in the center that are going to help you out against Fiends and Brutes and Gauns and maybe even a Magmadon or 2, but you're not going to have enough towers to protect yourself from every single angle that these Shadow Flyers can fly in from. Now, the supplies are getting a little bit closer, as I do kind of wonder what is like the ultimate game plan for TheoRy in the end, because just blowing up a collection array over and over again without really getting anything else done, I don't know if that's really viable in the long haul. Maybe it is, like maybe he will just keep doing this for the upcoming 20 minutes and then we're like, yeah, eventually Mana can no longer take a base because he keeps on losing all of his collection arrays and the man is just broke. I do feel that Mana is starting to create a terrifying army that is going to be damn difficult for TheoRy to deal with.
I am not sure. I'm just going to be real with you guys. 5 Archangels with the Avatar activated.
They look strong.
They do look strong, but that's like not an army. Those are 2 Magmadons so far. Here comes the rest of the army. And I guess he was hoping that they could stay around even longer and get kind of baited here. Gaunts are going to be able to attack them, but you can see the damage is not particularly impressive.
Well, Gaunts are quick, though.
Yeah. So they'll get many attacks, and then I don't know if these Archangels can heal up before they're forced back into the action, and they're not good unless they're just right there in the middle of the pack. So you can't be going in there with half-dead Archangels.
But I think as long as this kind of stuff is happening, where we're not even really trading out, it's like, all right, I attack you, you defend, if Mana can just start getting something going for himself on his side of the map and get his hands on these 2 Luminite mines, Mana's obviously going to feel a little bit better about it, as he does lose one of the Morph cores there, more Shadow Flyers coming in, and this is obviously the game plan right now of TheoRy. That's working out pretty well, but Mana will probably just look for time, because we can't forget how poor the early game was for Mana. Like, this game felt pretty much over, and at this point it still feels very annoying and very uncomfortable for Mana, but he's probably starting to dream again a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. I think you're right. You know, you deserve you deserve a dream, guys. Go ahead. But Mana, he's actually also coming into a place where I think a lot of Celestials are having trouble. Now, I'm not, I'm going to say it, I'm not an expert on that department, but it does seem to be the trend. A lot of Celestials, they get to the Supreme late game, or TheoRy's more there, but you know what I mean. They get to this stage, and they struggle even with a better start, even with a bigger army. So that's why I'm like, I understand that there's hope, but what will this actually look like when the two collide? So far, we've been kind of dodging a real battle.
Yep, and there really is not a lot of Luminite income at this point from Mana, so maybe that hope is starting to fade very quickly. I mean, I feel like Mana is nowhere near his dream situation, his dream army. He's got a couple of Archangels,
yeah.
That's very cool, but that's the equivalent of having like 5 carriers and nothing else in a game of StarCraft.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're really cool, but you do need some support for them. And Mana would obviously love way more Arges on the ground, maybe a couple of trees rolling around, and then a bunch of the Animances with Dark Prophecy later on. But yeah, at this point, it really does seem like TheoRy is never, ever, ever going to let Mana get there. For a split second, it looked like he was giving Mana too much time, but then he started blowing up every single collection array.
Yeah.
And Mana's is kind of stuck where, like, if it was a ladder game, he'd probably be out of here immediately, but the man came all the way here to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. He does not want to leave early. He's obviously hoping that maybe TheoRy takes a bad fight in range of static defenses, but at this point, TheoRy is doing a perfect job in not letting Mana grow any bigger.
And he also grew himself a little bit. You know, that third base was not as fast as I was anticipating, but he eventually got that saturated, and now he has a fourth. We have ourselves a battle here. The Arcane was going to slam on down, but that's not the entire army. The army was waiting over to the right side. We also got static defense helping out, and TheoRy, I think, is going to be happy with this fight. The Archangels are not doing enough. Magmadon on the top side taking out the Argents. We got the creep involved as well. 2 Archangels will escape. No, 1 Archangel will escape, and maybe make that 0 as he taps out. That was it. Mana actually not able to do it again the second time around versus TheoRy. TheoRy adapted, got his preferred game on Jagged Maw, and was able to advance forward.